The meeting open and welcome you to this month's meeting of Council. The recording of this Council meeting will be available to the public on Council's website for the minimum period of 6 months. In accordance with Council policy, I will now ask staff to confirm that the recording has commenced. Thank you. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the South East Nation, the Malakadee people of the Yuin River and the Lilliquanni people of Far South. We recognise their continued connection to land, water and culture. We recognise that we have much to learn from Aboriginal people today who represent the world's oldest continuing living culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Tonight in attendance we have Councillor Thorpe, we have Councillor Gibson, we have Councillor Armstrong, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Jessup, Councillor Camber-Smith and Councillor Burgess. Your council officers, General Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got the Director of Governance, Strategy and Sustainable Development, Matthew Grimsey, Director People and Corporate Services, David Spinks, the Director of Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services, Lockie Krantz, Acting Director, Community Wellbeing Services, Lyle Ground, Media and Communications Coordinator, Kelly Davis, and Executive Assistant, Sandy Rustell.
Thank you. 2.1, apologies, we have nil. 2.2, we have Councillor Temby as a leave of absence.
Yep.
And we have no absent. Yes.
Thanks, Mayor. Leave of absence in the future.
That's in enclosed. Okay, thank you. Declaration of interest. Do any councillors wish to declare an interest? No. Confirmation of minutes. I refer the councillors to the recommendation that minutes of the ordinary meeting of Wednesday the 29th of March as circulated be confirmed. Do I have a councillor to move those minutes? Councillor Gibson, a seconder. Councillor Jessup. Does any councillor wish to? Yes.
I just wanted to confirm that Councillor Temby's minor adjustment was made. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
They
right.
have, yep.
Yep. So does any councillor wish to report any changes other than the ones that were amended? Then I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Legislative items.
No, Mayor.
Urgent matters.
Yes, Mayor, I have one. I'll bring forward the following matter, which is the Finance and Development Services resourcing. In accordance with Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, the General Manager reports that the matter was not included on the agenda for the meeting as it was originally intended to be presented in May. However, due to urgency, it has been brought forward. The matter is urgent for work health and safety and other risk considerations. Qualified advice is provided for councillors for consideration enclosed as it deals with personnel matters. So the recommendation is pursuant to Regulation 8.6 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, the urgent matter of Finance and Development Services resourcing to be listed on the agenda for discussion as agenda item 19.022.23 in closed council.
Thank you. Okay, so do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Gibson and Councillor Camber-Smith. Do you wish to? Do I have any questions to that? So I'll just go straight through. Okay, so all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. 7, the Mayor's announcements. I would just like to make a quick announcement that a big thank you to council staff and residents of the Yuinville that put on Anzac Day in Yuinville after not having it the year before in a formal capacity. So thank you, Sandy. I know she's going to cringe, but thank you, and to the committee that done that, so that's tremendous, thank you. 8, public question time. 8.1, public question time, answers to previous questions taken on notice. As always, they are in the agenda and they're on the website. Questions without notice. There was 3 questions received and they can be found on the council's website and will be included in the minutes. From the gallery, do we have any questions from the gallery?
I submitted a question by email, I'm not sure.
Yep. Okay.
I submitted a question by email, I'm not sure whether I'm
Yep.
entitled to read it out as well. Can you read it?
Yes, you are. Yep. So just state your name
My
and
name's Jo Dillon,
yes.
Sydney residence. I just need to, my question is regarding the proposal to upgrade existing Telstra mobile phone base stations with 5G technology at Craddock, it's mobile tower number 7109 and Walton Grove tower number 7112 So the first part of my question is, in the interest of public knowledge, please make available before the deadline for submissions on Thursday, the 4th of May 2023 at 4 p.m, the health and safety risk assessment and/or the environmental impact analysis that have been completed for the installation of the towers or the alteration to the towers, notwithstanding mention of the telecommunications low impact facilities determination 2018 in brackets in inverted commas the determination close inverted commas as stated in the public notice attached, which was a public notice placed by Telstra giving Thursday 4th of May 5 p.m. as the deadline for public submissions to discuss this installation. There's a second part to the question as well.
Yeah.
Have any of the corporations involved in the installation of or the public consultation about the 5G towers at Craddock and Walton Grove, including Telstra, the Downer Group, Duggins Quarry Craddock, and the Huon Valley Council, taken out appropriate insurances in case of damage to Australian nationals, animals, or surrounding environments as a result of exposure to harmful emanations from the 5G towers?
Okay, so the first part there to your question was that the response was this is not a development application and council does not hold any information associated with the proposal. So it's not a DA. A public notice has been provided by Telstra and any inquiry should go back to them, Jo. It's not a DA.
But it's within the council jurisdiction,
The upgrade, but it's not, from what I can gather, they're not making their footprint bigger. Is that, they're just...
Through you, Mayor, by using the low impact facilities determination, it doesn't require a planning permit. So
Yeah.
it's purely done through Telstra.
Yeah, so it's just totally Telstra. And the insurance is a matter for individual parties associated with the proposal. We don't have any involvement with the proposal, so that would be a Telstra question.
Anybody can come here and do anything, and it doesn't matter if people are harmed, if the Huon Valley Council takes no responsibility for things of this nature that occur within the jurisdiction of the council.
Well, when it's Telstra, it's their project, so they'll be the one that'll be responsible if anything, if there is any, and they would make sure that everyone had the appropriate insurances, but that would be a question to Telstra, I suppose. Is that correct, Director? Yeah, so
corporations can come into the Huon Valley and make any changes to any technology, regardless of harm to people in the Huon Valley, it sounds like, without council being involved in any way.
If it doesn't require a DA, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
you,
thanks.
Jo. Do I have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Smith? Oh, Councillor Smith, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that, Dr Smith. Yep.
At the LPS hearings on Monday, I made a representation regarding the zoning of land, which is to be zoned urban growth and has the best long view of Port Signet from the Channel Highway south of Signet. 2 weeks ago, when the issue was raised, the Manager of Planning confirmed that it is important to protect that view. The view is currently protected by a scenic road corridor in the particular purpose zone, and the land will transfer into the new urban growth zone. A scenic road corridor cannot be applied in an urban growth zone, which seems strange to me, and buildings on a potential subdivision could block that important view of Port Signet. On Monday, I suggested that an open space zone beside the road could protect the view and also could be integrated with the adjacent 62-lot subdivision, which was approved last year, and this would benefit the community. The only response on behalf of the Planning Authority from the Manager of Planning, Mr. Bartlett, was that the subdivision had been amended. As representatives, we had not been informed of any amendments to the DA. The Council agreed several years ago to bring back to the Council table amendments to DAs that had come before the Planning Authority for approval. It appears that this no longer happens. So my question this evening is whether the Council will in future require that when a DA or subdivision has been approved and is subsequently amended, all councillors, as well as those who put in representations, will be provided with details of the amendment and the reasons, together with both the previously approved plan and the new layouts. And also, will this information be provided for all previous development applications and subdivision applications that have been approved by the Council as a planning authority but not yet fully implemented?
Okay, thank you. I'll have to pass that through to the Director, if I may.
Through you, Mayor, I'm certainly not aware of any amendment that's been referred to, so that one is, as I said, I'm not aware of that one. The process is, as you have stated, that any applications for minor amendment that have been brought before Council previously are brought to the Council to be determined. Also, where minor amendments are made, there's a requirement to notify representatives. So on that basis, I can only make a presumption that there hasn't been an amendment. I'm not sure of what discussion was had at the Monday session.
That was the only information that was provided when Mr. Ramsey asked for the planning authority's view on the proposal.
Okay.
I'll have to take that
Thank
one on
you.
notice.
Yeah, we'll take.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
And
you.
I just wondered about the Huon Valley vision, because I understand that the time for comment has been extended. I thought that might be an announcement at this meeting, since it's only a week away.
Okay.
Maybe follow up on that.
Okay, can I?
I'm not aware of any extension. The time was to conclude today, I think, was the final day.
Yes, it closed a couple of days ago. I understand that the time's been extended.
I didn't.
So just put that
No,
on the
okay.
record in case.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Do I have any other questions? Yes. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Mayor. Amy Robertson from Port Huon.
Thank you, Amy.
Is Huon Valley Council paying for consultants at TPC hearings to provide expert or planning authority opinion? And how much is this costing Huon Valley Council?
Okay, thank you. Through you, General Manager, can I ask that through to the Director?
Through you, Mayor, the consultants are providing opinion where Council has adopted their views. They are otherwise providing expert opinion. The council's representative at the LPS hearings is responsible for representation of planning authority. We haven't had costs collated in relation to this. We're going through the hearing process.
Okay, so we don't, at the moment, there was no, this is just whatever it costs. Is that correct? When,
Through you, Mayor, there is an indicative budget. I don't have that in front of me, and
Yep.
certainly
Yep.
that will be realised at the end of the hearings as to what it actually costs.
okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, Amy?
Amy Robertson, Port Huon again. Have there been any instances in TPC hearings to date where the Planning Authority has presented an opinion to TPC supportive of the representor and different to its engaged consultant's expert opinion, as might be expected following Council's insertion of additional principles in the Section 35F report's introduction? Are there any cases where the Planning Authority has presented a different opinion than the expert consultant?
Okay, thanks, Amy.
I'll have to take that one on notice, Mayor.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Do I have any other questions from the gallery? Okay, it's public question time. 8.2, deputation? No. Petitions? Neil? I'd like to now advise that the council is acting as a planning authority at, in accordance with the provision of Part 2 Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, the council will now act as a planning authority pursuant to the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. In accordance with Regulation 25, the council will act as a planning authority in respect to those matters appearing under item 10 on this agenda, inclusive of any supplementary items. Okay, agenda number 10.009/23. It's the planning application for construction of the new road by the Department of State Growth from the Ewan Highway near Orchard Avenue, Ewanville, to the junction of Channel Highway with Flood Road, Ewanville, Ewan Link Road, DA 337/2022. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith. You'd like to... Oh,
Move another motion.
yes. Is that... Oh, it was Toby. I asked you to move, so...
You seconded it.
Through you moving this motion?
I'd like to move amendments to the motion.
Yes, yes. Yep.
Um,
Do I... Yeah.
Through you, Mayor, you need to hear what the motion
Yeah,
is
that's
before you
right.
can
So
receive a
that's...
second.
And then they second it. Thank you. I thought I was right. Yep.
my colleagues here know that my resident and Councillor Hatton has stated that it's 30 million road and a number of grounds, not least it being that there's nothing to lose as payments on the private car, which is an essential element of any serious climate change strategy, and because it goes against one of the main tenets of the Huron-Durham Master Plan, which is a comprehensive holistic transport management plan, must be developed prior to any roading actions, and because it will only remove 10 to 15% of traffic from Huronville for only 2 to 3 years, and remove hardly any large trucks and do nothing to reduce the problem for the Esplanade main road junction. However,
Yes, okay. Just... Yep, it's okay. No, but what I'm just going to say is we need the motion, not your preamble. Yeah, so go your motion and then I'll give you a chance to... Yeah, once I have a seconder.
Okay, I would like to change clause 3. Firstly, I commend the officers for including biodiversity
the conservation and environment management plan and various other conditions in here which I feel are very good, thank you. But I'd like to do what I can with my planning authority hat on to alleviate some of the climate change harms that I think might transpire from this road. So I'd like to change clause 3 of the landscape plan to A, prior to commencement of the works, a landscape plan be prepared by a suitably qualified person and be submitted for approval to the satisfaction of some director infrastructure climate and environment services. B, the landscape plan to include further plantings to provide screening along both sides of the new road and shared paths where space allows. The plan must show proposed plantings in the area of the use and development approved by this permit and detail quantity and types of proposed trees, shrubs and ground covers to build on shelter height. A, the plan to include a timeline for plantings and plantings to be undertaken at an early stage wherever practical. And B, for all roadside plantings to be managed within the Department of State Roadside Conservation Sites Programme on a long-term basis in conjunction with the biodiversity offset area referred to in clause 19. D, following approval, the landscape plan will be endorsed and is to form part of the permit. These plantings must be completed in accordance with the approved landscape plan prior to practical completion of the development. I'd also like to add an additional clause. A, that the General Manager write a letter to the applicant to accompany the permit requesting that the following matters be considered in the design and development. A, that Huon Valley Council has declared a climate emergency and thus request that consideration be given 1, to this road forming a future public transit corridor with a bus stop designed accordingly, including potential links to new residential areas and a shared path, sufficient space for more than one transit vehicle to stop, and an enclosed large bus shelter. 2, to the funding of an integrated transport scheme for the Huon-Kingborough-Hobart corridor. B, given the road borders a large area of land designated as urban growth, with a question for residential development, Council requests that the road be designated as 60 km/h maximum along its length, and that allowance be made for at least one entrance/exit for vehicles entering/leaving the new residential area. C, the flood road upgrade and changed intersection with the Estuary Road borders an important upland reserve, described in the natural values assessment as meeting the criteria for national environmental significance under the EPBC Act. Also, the Huon Valley is known for its vast biodiversity. Council therefore requests that measures be taken to reduce the incidence of road flow, both on Flood Road and the new road section. This might include signage along the length of the road and a wildlife tunnel/bridge at the south end.
Okay, do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Gibson. Okay, Councillor Camber-Smith, do you wish to speak to your amended?
Briefly, I did snuck into my PM.
Yep.
Yeah, I just feel that we should do what we can here to future-proof this road. To future-proof this road with respect to our resolution of the council to declare a climate change emergency. A greater number of plantings along the roadside would have a huge beneficial effect on the residents and also users of the shared path with respect to visual amenity and soaking up of pollution. Oh, is that not working? Soaking up of, oh yeah. I was trying to speak as loud as I could. Pollution and noise make a much pleasanter experience for people using the shared path, and we need to encourage that element of active transport. In the future, we will be forced to reduce our dependence on private car because we can't continue to fill up our single lane roads with more and more private cars, and that will require greater public transport. So let's make this road available to be used sensibly as a public transit corridor, not just for private cars. Yep, so I commend the motion to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Does anyone want to speak against the motion? Yes? Okay. Councillor Burgess, I'll start with you.
The original landscape plan is coming in 6 months later, so to do a comprehensive landscape plan now, my fear is that it could delay the project by 6 months, and that could end up, losing a year somewhere if they're dependent on climate to get the work done. And also the one about the 60 kilometres in the second additional part of the clause, I think it'd be more timely to wait until those roads are talked about in the future and are going to be added, instead of just surmising that they are now and allowing for it at this stage. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. I was almost going to say exactly what my erstwhile colleague was going to say. We do approve the landscape plan when it comes in, so I think we have some ability to influence that at that point. And I think with the second part of the question, look, I certainly agree that we need to plan for greater public transport use. I've sat in on the LPS hearings for quite a bit and actually heard a number of developers who have got land in that area who are very, very keen to develop it. I've heard them being told that it's going to take at least 2 years for the LPS to go through and for their applications to be considered. So all of that future urban land, if the Commission agrees with the Planning Authority's request, isn't going to be touched for the next 2 years potentially. And some of the discussion we had outside of council was making sure we do a specific area plan for that whole chunk of land, and the Director Grimsey has assured us that will be part of the LPS process, and I think we need to sit up in our helicopter and look at all of that land and look at the entry routes, look at a park and ride facility and all those sort of things. So I think while I agree with a number of the sentiments in the motion, I think we need to prosecute that through the SAP process and actually genuinely use a great opportunity to develop that land from the link road to Huonville and actually have a strongly integrated living, commuting, walking, livable community plan in that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Jessup. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I think all of that makes sense, and I think Jenny's raised some reasonable points that weren't in the original application. But the other thing to remember too is, this has been in the pipeline for a very long time. It's not the original route because, building has taken place where the original route was. So even a master plan isn't always adhered to. Things change, things progress. I don't fully, I know that there's reports being done on traffic. I don't fully think that is potentially how it's going to be. I think, like for instance, northbound traffic might take that route and then turn south to come into Huonville from the top end. I think perhaps there will be more usage than has been recorded. I also think it would be really good to have another option to leave Huonville in case of emergency, because presently there's only the one road, which was a bit of a concern during the fires. If you're blocked in, you're kind of blocked in. So it would be nice to have that. But the other thing too is, as a council, we've been screaming about how we need to provide infrastructure going forward. And then we had potential to have infrastructure, and it ended up being subdivisions and built on. So if we refuse this road, we may not get another opportunity. And regardless of whether it follows more of a green movement or a climate change movement or no movement, we are going to grow, we are going to go forward. We will need another access route, whether it be for public transport or whatnot. So I think we do need to consider realistically how beneficial this could be. And if we refuse it, then we're just going backwards.
I don't think it was refusal, it was amendment to the
Or
motion.
amending
Yeah,
to- yes,
yeah,
or
thank you.
changing the original
Yeah.
criteria. And whilst I do agree with a lot of what Jenny says,
Yeah,
I'm not unhappy with the original
yeah,
DA either.
all right. Anyone else to speak against the motion? Yep, yes, councillor O'Neill?
Back up the three previous speakers.
Yep.
I accept that Jenny's made good points here, but I think they can all be massaged as the project progresses.
Okay,
So if we can plant better, to do more plantings.
Yep.
The speed limit, I think you wait until you actually see what the road is and
Yep.
then. And obviously you should have bus depots and that sort of thing as well. So, but I don't want to see the project held up.
No.
I want to be started and we address those as we go.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I realise that. Yep, so, you have a statement or a question?
I would like to speak in favour of the motion.
Yep, okay, go ahead.
There's been a lot speaking against it.
Yeah,
I think it's actually very well thought through and sensible motion. I mean, I can't see why we would object to the landscape plan being prepared. I would suggest, if there's a problem about time, removing the first few words prior to commencement of the works, because that would mean that at least we're just getting a really good landscape plan. We're getting some planting buffers between the walking track and the road, which I think is really important, and the biodiversity issues that Councillor Campbell-Smith has mentioned. The second clause is simply a letter to the applicant. The key part of it for me is that we actually seek funding for an integrated transport scheme for Huon, Kingborough and Hobart, and I'd like to foreshadow, if this motion goes through, to simplify just to that, a letter just requesting that, because I think that's really important. We are getting very close to peak private car time, and we're building new roads that are specifically designed for private owned cars. It's very hard to see the future, but we know that climate change is going to just change everything, and so to be spending all of this money without looking at a proper integrated transport plan for the future, I think is a mistake.
thank you, councillor Gibson. Councillor Campbell-Smith, do you want to close? Or you've got a question? Or
A point of clarification as well, if I may. There's already an advisory included in the motion for the speed limit to be 60 kph, and yet people are speaking against that. So are they speaking against the motion or my motion? Because I'm just asking in my letter that they council considers a 60 kph. We've already included that in here.
Okay, thank you.
And it seems, remarkably sensible if we want to use it as a proper access and to enclose, a SAP area. I can't see why you'd have that. If you wouldn't normally have a road that has entrances and exits into subdivisions being an 80 km/h anyhow.
All right, thank you. Just hang on a moment.
I'm happy to give this open. Yep. Through you, Mayor, just some clarification of process here. You have a motion before you which is approving the development subject to conditions. In those circumstances, if councillors were to wish to approve the development but wish to have different conditions and those have been proposed in the motion, you'll need to make an amendment to change those conditions as proposed. That's rather than voting against the motion, because the motion would then be lost. Your alternative is a refusal.
No.
Through you, Mayor, the Councillor Campbell-Smith moved a motion which was in the form of the recommendation with amendments to condition 3 and a further paragraph C.
A point of clarification, I'm foreshadowing the motion as per the council papers with a very minor amendment to write a letter seeking an integrated transport scheme be approved.
Foreshadowing a potential amendment. That would be foreshadowing a potential amendment. Well, before Councillor Camber-Smith closes.
I'm happy to accept an amendment to...
You have to
remove the prior to commencement of the works
right.
in A, as the
Motion amendment. Yeah.
the motion putter.
But we have to do the motion. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor, if the mover and seconder agree, you've got
Yeah.
general consent of the meeting.
Okay.
That's right.
Then condition 3A would revert to within 6 months of the commencement of the works, a landscape plan prepared.
We can't just revert to a landscape plan. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. But then there's other elements in here about the screenings that I don't want to remove. Okay.
Okay. So now we. Yes.
Yeah, so let me get this right. So the substantive motion is as per the agenda paper. We're voting on an amendment to the substantive motion, and if that amendment is lost, it goes back to the substantive motion?
No, through you, Mayor, the motion that was moved by Councillor Camber-Smith, was not an amendment. The recommendation was not moved as itself.
It was moved.
Councillor Camber-Smith moved a recommendation with an amendment to condition 3 and a further paragraph C, which is the letter to DSG.
So is it then possible to foreshadow that if this motion is lost, that the original motion be put? Is that possible to foreshadow that as a motion?
Where it just becomes a procedural issue, Mayor, is that you have a motion for approval before the meeting. If you move a motion against approval, the alternative is a refusal. So if you wish to have it approved, then you'll need to amend conditions if they're not satisfactory to you.
So could I then move an amendment that we strike out Councillor Camber-Smith's amendments?
Camber-Smith.
Camber-Smith.
Sorry.
Through
Through
you,
you.
Mayor, effectively the the amendment would be to revert to the recommendation.
So that would be a legal possibility. Right. Let me contemplate that for a moment.
We haven't heard from Toby.
So, okay. Do you wish to speak to this?
I actually think most of the points that I wanted to raise have been clarified, so I don't have any further comments.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Councillor Jessup?
I would like to move an amendment that we revert back to the original motion, in effect.
Right.
While I have some sympathy for what's in there, I think it is confusing the implementation of the motion with our role as a planning authority, which is to approve the development application.
Okay, do I have a seconder for the amended motion? Councillor Burgess, do you wish to speak to that? Have you got that motion down?
Through you, Mayor, the motion is as
Amended.
in the form of the recommendation.
Yep, okay, right. Do you wish to speak to that?
Briefly, I believe as the motion that I have now moved directs the planting approval to be sent to the Manager Environmental Services, etc. I would urge the relevant director to take note of the valid points that were included in the amendment, and that given that we approve the landscape plan, we can actually obviously influence that. I would suggest Mr Krantz would be correct. So I think we already have that power to enact a large number of the points in the first part of Jenny's motion, and then the second part. Look, my ideological perspective is that needs to be dealt with at a much higher level around the planning of the whole space, and I don't want piecemeal actions, and I think potentially it runs a risk of being piecemeal. Thank you.
Yes, Director.
Through you, Mayor, just to clarify, in relation to condition 3, if that reverts to the original, the assessment of the landscape plan will be based upon what has been approved under the plan and the permit. It will not include the extra screening because that's not mentioned in the permit. There's something called certainty in the planning permit.
Okay, do I have... yes, I was just about to come to that. Do I have a councillor speak against the motion? Amended. Amendment, yep, to the motion.
Yes, I honestly cannot understand why anybody would vote against a request for additional planting. Almost every road that's put in now includes a whole load of plantings along the side of the road for obvious reasons. I mean, we know that any additions of vegetation assist with noise and pollution control. There's absolutely no reason why it would cause any delay at all. I mean, somebody could be doing the landscape plan concurrently with the finalisation of the design of the road. There's still heaps of work to be done in terms of firming up the design and the surveying whilst this has been whilst the landscape plan could be done, in parallel with that. I don't think our community would thank us for missing the opportunity to provide them with some additional vegetation that will soak up the noise and the pollution and assist with their climate change obligations.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell-Smith. Anyone else to speak against the motion? Amendment to the motion? You're speaking? Are you speaking against the amendment to the motion?
I'm speaking for the motion. That's
Right, I haven't asked that yet. Is any other speaking against? Yes, Councillor Gibson?
I'd like to speak against the removal of a letter requesting funding for an integrated transport scheme for the Huron, Kingborough and Hobart corridor, because it's only a letter. We've declared a climate emergency. We know that we're going to have to head in this direction. The sooner we start to actually have some planning around this, the better. And I don't really see what damage it could possibly do.
Do you think that letter can be requested anyway, regardless of this?
It can.
Yep, thank you. Okay, do I have anyone that wants to speak for the amendment to the motion?
Yes, thank
Yes.
you, Mayor. I find it interesting that Councillor Campbell-Smith knows that there's not going to be enough trees put in. So I'd like to see the plan come to us when we've got to actually give approval for it. So I just don't understand that the knowledge is already there that there won't be enough trees.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else to? Yes, Councillor.
So if that's a proposed amendment to the motion, I reluctantly would accept a change to 3A, which said submit it for approval to the satisfaction of the Council's Director, Infrastructure, Climate and Environment, and be provided to the next council meeting. That way we get to see it and, add our 2 cents worth.
Could I
Are you happy with that?
Could I please answer Andrew's question?
Through you, Mayor, the difficulty is that the landscape plan will have already been approved, so there would be no 2 cents worth of input in once it's presented to the next council meeting. And I go back to my comment in relation to if you don't have the provision in the planning permit regarding screening of or screening, then that won't be a consideration in approving the landscape plan.
Person. Can we then maybe go something like prepared by a suitably qualified person and include, I'm just looking for the words here, provide and include screening along both sides of the new road and shared path?
I think the same answer is going to be given through you, Director. So you want to...
So if we basically just changed clause 3A that said, that would say within 6 months of the commencement of the works, a landscape plan be prepared by a suitably qualified person that includes further planting to provide screening along both sides of the new road and shared path.
But doesn't that read already that there must be submitted for approval to the satisfaction?
Well, although I think we're being told by the Director that we can't change that. That's the implication that I'm getting. Is that right? He's nodding. So if we add a specific clause in that says there must be sufficient screening, that would then become part of the planning approval.
Which is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be more parsimonious.
Mayor, may I answer Andrew's question about not knowing about the amount of planting? Because it's in the application. It states that there will only be 2 areas of small screening on the road. It states it quite clearly. One is by Hanson's Orchards, where they've requested it, and one is by another residence where they've requested it. It says there is to be no other planting apart from that small biodiversity offset. No planting. It makes it quite clear. This is why I've specifically tried to include it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Back to you then.
635.
You're making...
So if with Councillor Burgess
agrees.
support, just to add to 3A, that after prepared by a suitably qualified person and provides screening along both sides of the new road and shared path, comma, which must be submitted for approval, blah, blah, blah. So it really just adds that one clause in there.
Okay. And you accept that? Yes, I agree. Okay. All right. Is there any other questions? Yes. Councillor?
Through you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Of course I have a question. So obviously this report's been written for a certain reason by professionals who know what they're doing, hopefully. Is there a reason why there would not be planting all the way along the road on both sides? Like, is there a technical reason why that's not in the application? Is there a reason that it's only in a couple of spots? Is it for water runoff or drainage? Is the road going to be high? There's got to be a reason they haven't recommended that planting be all the way along both sides of the road.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Armstrong. I will pass through to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, I don't know the reason why State Growth have particularly decided that way. It's your consideration as a planning authority, whether you believe you've got the power under the scheme to provide for that screening along the road.
Wait a moment. Yes.
Through
okay.
you, Mayor, I can provide a little context on that. Look, in summary, I guess there's State Growth feel there's sufficient buffer from the road, just distance from the road to the back of residents, etc. They've got their design codes that they apply. If there's existing residential development requires sound, physical sound barriers, things like that. They don't apply in some of these cases because we have subdivisible land, but it has not yet been developed. So ultimately, if they don't have to do it, then landscaping just comes at additional cost to the project. And as project managers, they're trying to minimise the cost of this already expensive project.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions or statements? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
If I can understand it, Councillor Jessop's suggesting just adding another sentence to the existing clause 3. He does realise under B of that same clause, it talks about partial screening of adjoining residential properties, which suggests they're going to do as little as possible under that landscape plan, whereas the suggested amendment makes it explicit that they're to do what they can where it's practical. Wherever space
I think
allows, where
that,
practical.
yeah, Councillor Jessop, you,
Look,
yeah.
I think we're saying that they must provide screening along both sides of the road, and I take Director Krantz's comment that it's very easy for main roads to say, oh, well, there's no houses there at the moment, but we all know that in the next 5 years there's going to be quite a few houses along there, so let's actually hold them to account to the standard. And I don't think Director Krantz were asking them to do anything more than they would do if those blocks were already developed. So I think we're looking at the future amenity for ratepayers, and I think I'm happy to leave it to them to do their job, and I don't want to be too. That's why I'm shying away from being too explicit, because I'm not an expert on trees and growths, and I don't want us to become bogged down with which version of eucalypt we're planting and stuff.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, was that your closing, or do you?
I don't think I'll say anything more. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So I put forward the amendment to the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
I'm not certain what we're voting for.
Okay. Would you like to read it again, Councillor Jessop? Yep.
As the motion, as in the papers here, are some 6 pages long.
Yeah.
I'm not that keen to read it, but
Yeah.
I wonder if the director. Thank you. I wonder if the director could just read 3A as he has it written down there. Is that?
Yep. Okay. Through to you, Director.
I need to do a bit of jumping, Mayor.
Yep. You're fine.
Prior to commencement of the work, paragraph A would read, within 6 months of the commencement of the works, a landscape plan prepared by a suitably qualified person, I have to jump down, and provide screening along both sides of the new road and shared path, which must be submitted for approval
To the
to the satisfaction of Council's Director, Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services.
I think the word should be rather than and which provides, I think would be the better grammar.
Okay. Are you clear on that, or do you want me to? Yep. Okay. Yes.
Get a clarification on the subject matter screening on both the road and shared path. For clarity, because the question will be asked of us by DSG, what exactly we mean by that. Are we screening each side of the road, or are we screening between the road and the path, and then the path again to the residents?
Both. That's
So-
exactly what's intended by my motion.
So the intention is to have a screened shared path, so like a green corridor on either sides of the shared path. So you've got a vegetation between path and road, and then between path and residents.
Indeed.
Is that the understanding of all councillors? That's what we're asking for?
The residences are probably my primary thing. I'm also thinking of a public safety issue, that if we've got a path that's heavily screened by vegetation on either side, it will be, I think people may feel it to be an unsafe place to use.
Yep.
And that's just
Appropriately done, though. That's appropriate. Well, it's not going to be huge, great things, is it? There'll be.
Okay. Hang on a moment.
So I'm happy that the screening be focused on the residential fence, I think. Yeah. Again, we're probably getting into detail that I would hope the officer would be able to.
Well, so through you, Mayor, so the officer will be bound up by what the determination of council is, and as it stands, that's why I'm seeking the clarity, because the question will be asked, and I want it to be clear.
just the residential side at this point.
Okay, so it'll read, within 6 months of the commencement of the work, a landscape plan prepared by a suitable qualified person which must provide,
Which provides, provides screening along, and at the moment is both sides of the new road and shared path.
one side.
So,
You just said, just on the
so
residential.
is clarification on that it will be along the residential side of the new road and shared path?
Can I just suggest that we also screen between the road and the path? Because I think that that's actually quite an important place.
But okay, but hang on a minute, we're voting at the moment.
Through you, Mayor, screening between there's a whole range of considerations around vegetating along roadsides. It's significant. Personally, I wouldn't be requesting screening between the road and the path. It will require re-engineering of the outcome. I think the screening is a very good idea. It's something that we've had lengthy discussions with DSG about through the life of this project to get that residential amenity, the sound buffer, etc. My advice is limit it to that. I would be asking for both sides of the road. We don't know what future development will occur on either side of the road. It will be residential for significant parts on both sides of the road. I would limit it to that and exclude just the note to the shared path, and that provides us with a basis to then have a conversation with DSG about what is an appropriate screening where we can deal with maintenance issues, public safety issues, lighting issues for the public, use of the path, etc., without limiting ourselves to trying to force vegetation between a path and a roadway, which is already quite tight.
Sure.
That's just my qualified advice on this.
Okay, so are you happy for your amended motion to state exactly what was just said by Lockie, which will make it...
Trim it to both sides of the road.
Yep.
Both sides of the road.
Yep.
I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that? Are you happy with that? To be able to, how the wording is for that?
Through you, Mayor, just to clarify the wording, which provides screening along both sides of the new road.
Delete and shared path would be that.
Just a point of clarification, that would mean for most of the length of it, there would be screening between the shared path and the road. Is that not correct?
It's through you, Mayor.
Wait a moment.
Exactly, in some cases, because the road is the boundary we're trying to screen off. So in some cases we'll have vegetation between road and path where it makes sense, and some cases where it will happen on the other side of the path.
Yeah.
It gives us the flexibility to get the landscaping plan sensitive to the environment rather than dictating something that will look very confused and will require a lot of engineering.
Okay,
Thanks.
so will we read the motion out again? Please.
Through you, Mayor, it's in the form of the recommendation with an amended condition 3A, which would read, within 6 months of the commencement of the works, a landscape plan prepared by a suitably qualified person, which provides screening along both sides of the new road, must be submitted for approval to the satisfaction of Council's Director, Infrastructure, Climate and Environmental Services.
Are you happy with that?
I think the Director has finally got it right.
Okay.
Well done, Mr Grimsey.
Thank you. Okay, so we're now going to, I'll ask all those in favour of that amendment to the motion, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Do I then go back to the original?
The amendment becomes a motion.
Yep, okay, so the amendment becomes the motion, and then I just have to get a seconder, someone to move that? Yes.
Through you, Mayor, the amendment has become the motion, so
Yep.
your discussion now goes back to the motion.
Okay.
Or whether you wish to entertain any more amendments.
Yep, all right. Okay, so do I have a councillor to move Please, yep.
Through
no?
you, Mayor, it already has been moved.
So now we just have
So
conversation.
it's just completing,
Okay.
completing discussion.
Okay. Any other further comment or discussion?
My closing comment, if that's what you're
Yep.
asking me.
No, we've already voted on that, but yep, go for it.
No, I commend the motion, and I'm not opposed that we also lobby the government for a Hewlett corridor plan, and I think we can do that separate to that and ask the General Manager to consider that a worthwhile task. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no other comment? All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor, please keep your hands raised. That's Councillor Burgess, Jessup, Armstrong, Thorpe, Doyle, Gibson and O'Neill, and against is Councillor Camber-Smith. All right, wow. Let me find the next one. Okay, agenda item 10.010/23, report under section 35F of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 on a representation received by the Planning Authority following exhibition of the draft Yuan Valley Local Provision Schedule LPS HUOTPS. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Jessup, do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Jessup, do you wish to speak to the motion, to the recommendation?
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the Riley Creek change that from, I can't remember what it was, but to utility. I was in the LPS when Tas Irrigation presented their case. What their concern was that under the proposed zoning, it would be quite difficult for them to manage it as both an environmental area and also as a use area, and it is I can't remember the wording, Class 1 dam, which I think means that if it breaks, it potentially will kill people, and they were concerned about that, and they said that by zoning it utility, it's a more appropriate zoning for the size and use of the asset. So I would encourage councillors to support that. Thank you.
Okay, do I have anyone to speak against this motion? Or do I have any questions or? No? Okay. Oh, well, pardon? Yeah, I had a seconder. Do you want to close?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. I'd like to advise that the council is no longer acting as a planning authority at 7:03. Thank you. 11, general reports. We have... do I have any councillors tabling their activities?
Yes, Mayor.
Yep, thank you. I refer the councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith, and a seconder, Councillor Gibson. Is there anyone to... It's minutes?
Camber-Smith moving the motion or the recommendation or another motion?
Okay, yes. Are you moving your motion or the recommendation? Amended motion. Yeah.
First of those March be received and noted, and to add an additional clause, if I may.
Yep.
An additional clause, if I may, that in council requests in future general reports, the following being included in line with all the various record keeping, say for other staff, that GM attendance records for the preceding month are also included, including where strategic meetings could not be attended. The results of exit interviews undertaken with staff leaving the council employ because we mentioned we do them, but not what the results are. Further detail on GM and mayor activities, including names of consultant, resident, community group or other, and brief reason for their meeting. That the mayor please provide councillors with a weekly report on issues arising, including those from the weekly meetings of the GM via a half-hour Teams meeting. Any of the above considered commercial or, confidential or commercial in confidence to be provided in the general reports for closed meeting.
Okay, so that's Councillor Gibson. I ask you to second that. Are you seconding the amendment to the motion?
Yes, why not?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Just briefly, if I may, Mayor. It's just in terms of us councillors doing our duty as we are required. We obviously cannot manage staff or appropriately look after the well-being of staff unless we also, manage the GM as we do, obviously, to the GM PRC. There has been a certain amount of sick leave and stuff, and which is perfectly acceptable. I just, I see no reason why the attendance record should be kept secret, though, and from councillors, whether or not there's obviously there's no specific intention to keep them secret, but it'd be nice to have that information explicit. I'd like to have, I just feel that the statement in the GM in the general report saying that we've exit interviews have been undertaken is a bit stark and doesn't tell us what the results of those were, because clearly there could be something that us as councillors could learn from or take on board. And at the moment, the GM and mayor activities, which obviously thank you very much for, and they have improved, but we still don't know most of these people that are being met with and why. I think it would be awfully useful for us to understand that. And we as councillors, we've not been briefed on the weekly meeting between the mayor and the GM, and there's been a number of instances where some people have found out something and some others, or we've learnt something from the community, and I think that could be resolved very easily with a half-hour Teams meeting once a week. Which not every councillor obviously has to attend, but those with an interest, maybe you'd attend one week and not another. And I think it would resolve a lot of the issues we've been having with respect to, answering resident queries that have been coming in to all councillors or and things like that. When we could be a much more effective team.
Okay, do I have anyone to speak against the motion, the amendment to the motion? Yes, she moved the amendment.
So we're voting on this as amended
Yep.
motion.
Okay.
It's an amended motion.
Yep.
So if we vote against this, we reject the reports.
Through you, Mayor, technically speaking, you haven't rejected the reports, you just haven't received and noted them.
But then we can't hear them, so we can't discuss them further. So I'm being a pedant on that.
There is an option available, as in last time, to have an amendment. Yes, Councillor O'Neill.
Just a question. With exit interviews and making those available for councillors, wouldn't there be a privacy issue there? I mean, it's not really
I'll go through to the General Manager.
I guess my question would be on a number of these points, trying to clarify, but that one in particular, there will be potentially an aversion to people completing these surveys if they know that they're going beyond those trusted personnel that do look at them, and I guess, you know, largely what we use them for is to work out how we can change what we're doing and respond, not look to publicise and make them of any interest to the community. It's more about how we can, as an organisation, refine our practices and speak to, you know, our people. So, look, again, if it's in a general sense, just looking to get to understand, you know, what themes are coming through, I can certainly appreciate that. But, you know, I think the reality is that both positive and negative come out of these exit surveys, and we want to make sure that we continue doing the things we do well, but take those lessons when we don't do things as well as we could. So happy to share at a high level. I think we just have to make sure that this information isn't about trying to understand or persecute people giving us negative feedback, as much as taking the lessons and celebrating the wins, because, you know, a lot of people leave us because they're going on to better things. So that's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I take that completely on board, if I may, through you, Mayor. It was purely at a high level, not to name names. It was just to understand, you know, some of the reasons or suggestions that they may have that could help to improve our processes.
Yeah, I guess, and the other one was just in regards to my attendance records. I guess we've exchanged some emails in regards to the reality of my time, and I guess as I was as honest as I could be, there's 200 people working across the business, and I don't think there's a need for me to be in any of the meetings necessarily that I go to, as much as being able to support the people and keep us moving. So again, I'm just curious again what the purpose of that would be, because I don't want to disempower by turning up to meetings that I don't need to be. Equally, I want to support the team to the meetings I do need to be at. So I'm interested by the concept of strategic meetings. It seems...
I guess such as meetings with high-level politicians or the Jobs Hub, that or council meetings or workshops. It's those sorts of things, as opposed to, you know, yeah.
Yes, Councillor Jessup.
So just a couple of questions of clarification. The results of exit interviews, I would rather a word like summary of exit interviews over the period, so we're not reassuring stuff. But just in line of what the GM's saying, I would read that as of GM's attendance at records of meetings that you were required, that you're on the committee of, for example, like ELT. If you're not going to ELT, that's something. But I think all your other meetings get included in the front page of your report anyway. So those meetings with politicians, and yeah, I don't know how many meetings the GM is a statutory member of, but attendance for me is if you're attending, you have to attend. If you're absent, you're absent. If you could walk into a meeting over at the hub and talk to your staff, well, that's not an attendance, that's just doing your rounds, if that helps. So I don't see it quite as broad as that.
Well, and thanks for your clarity. I guess that, you know, largely the weekly ELT meeting I wouldn't consider strategical. In fact, we have one strategy meeting a month as by title. So that's why I'm sort of curious as to what is looking to be understood out of this, because, yeah, look, again, I just want to understand better what you're trying to get out of it.
There have been occasional unexplained absences. We weren't informed at the last meeting, council meeting, where you were. We only found out, some of us only found out by accident, about sickness, It's just, you know, we collect
just-
this,
yeah.
attendance information is normal information that is supplied for all other staff, including sick leave, absence, so if we're going to manage the GM appropriately, I cannot see why we wouldn't see those records. You know, 6 days, leave of absence 5 days, here for the remaining days, and unfortunately cannot attend X, and that's it. It's as simple as that. It's nothing sinister, or it's just to scotch various rumours and things that have been going on as well, and suspicions, because there is no doubt that at the last council meeting, without that your absence having been noted, that immediately suspicions are raised, speculations raised in the community. If we
about what they.
why you weren't there, because it wasn't said.
But we don't say for the other directors either.
It's quite different though, isn't it? I think. Yeah.
And I'm sorry you didn't hear. I did say to the other councillors, that the ones that were around before there, that the reason for Jason's absent, but I'm sorry you weren't there to hear that. But I don't believe we need to do that. But and as far as I'm concerned, with the Mayor providing a weekly report, when I have meetings with politicians, I have told you, everyone, by email, when I had met and told you that I had that meeting. I'd done a weekly report before, and then other people just told me I didn't need, that they're sick of emails. So anyway, this is the... You guys go forward with whatever you want to move, or the amendment, or whatever, and then we'll have to do whatever is required. So we are at Councillor... We have, Canberra Smith's amendment, and then Councillor Jessup. No, wasn't no. Okay, all right. So, do I have anyone else to ask a question, or? Yes, Councillor.
I guess just we've had a bit of discussion about a few things, and if we're going to actually get this straight, should we say, as far as the executive views, higher level should be in there somewhere? And I take the General Manager's point about what is a strategic meeting. I'm not quite sure what's the best thing to do there, but I think it is the sort of information that we should know in general, but I don't know quite what is and what isn't a strategic. And with regard to the weekly report, I would delete the word report and change it to discussion, because I think that's really what we need as a set of councillors, to just have a weekly discussion. I think we've all talked about it a lot of times, and we all think it's a good idea. So, and those who can turn up will. It just keeps everybody up to speed with what's happening. I think that's really sensible. So I guess apart from that question about the strategic meeting, and maybe Councillor Canberra-Smith could suggest an adjustment to that, I'm in support of including this is as a part of the monthly reporting. And I'm reassured that the last two lines make it very clear that anything that needs to be confidential and commercial in confidence just goes into closed. So we've got no issues about that. I mean, the whole lot could be enclosed.
Maybe Councillor Jessup, you could suggest something instead of strategic meetings, if there's a better wording there. That's not. That's the best I could come up with.
Either that, or if there's no one no more to speak or have questions about it, we go to the vote.
Can I just add one other point? So all of my leave applications are approved by the Mayor. So the mayor gets my sick leave, my annual leave, any other leave, which I don't obviously take anything else, has my leave balances, and that was something I offered up on the back of talking to another councillor who wasn't having that information.
So the mayor gets that information?
Yes, I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, I approve the leave because we are Jason's employer, and that's part of my role.
so if you want my leave balance stats, I think it's only appropriate that it stays out of the general manager report and go into closed.
Of course.
That's fine.
Of course.
If you want that information, I don't have any issues with that
Okay.
information being shared. I
Fine.
mean, it's
That's
largely
fine.
not
Good.
secret. It's obviously going to payroll and it is a payroll record. So.
Exactly, yes.
Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just a little bit concerned with the third dot point. It worries me, and moving to closed has actually changed this statement a little bit, but I worry what impact it would have on residents or anybody else, businesses for that matter, about if they want to come and have a confidential discussion with you about, I want to do something with a neighbour, or I'm concerned about what the neighbour's doing. I'm just concerned of what angst that could cause. That, if they read in the Mr. Smith read that Jones bloke came to the mayor to have a whinge about his, cow bellowing of a night time. It just concerns me how we would be potentially fostering, feuds and disagreement. So again, it's how we. A lot of this stuff at summary level, and I do agree that, no offence, General Manager, but I think those first statements could be a little bit thicker, like attended a meeting with a local artist. It would be nice to know if there were outcomes, for example, and as a consequence, I'm going to put something to council later on, just so we get a bit of a heads up of what the feel of the community is, sort of thing. But I do realise that many of your meetings are potentially sensitive, commercially insensitive, some of them, but would also be staff in confidence, in sensitivity as well. So I'm just not sure how we get around that point without offending people or breaching their confidentiality.
Can I just add, and a number of these meetings are about escalation. So if something isn't going right, more often than not, they're coming to me, and they don't necessarily want it made public record that they're coming to me to have a chat. So I totally appreciate you want some more information, and not all of them are about outcomes that are, economic stories of success. So largely, I guess that is potentially going to be compromised in a sense of escalation because people won't want it on public record.
But it won't be on the public record if it's enclosed. It will only be with us, and we are in enclosed meeting. We are obliged as councillors to keep such information secret.
Can I just say then, if it's to stop the ants from the community,
No, it's nothing to do with that. It's for us to do our job properly as councillors.
You did say that to cover angst and things from the community, so it's all going to be enclosed.
Well,
You've just null and
it
void
wouldn't
that.
all be enclosed, would it? I mean, the chairman just told us that his attendance records aren't secret, but although he would provide that enclosed. But no, for us to do our job properly as councillors and to manage, I mean, we've just been told that the mayor does actually receive those attendance records, so there's no reason why we couldn't get those enclosed. Doesn't sound like it's a big deal.
but that still won't alleviate the resident.
Right, but it
Yep.
would alleviate mine.
Unless you're going to then report.
It would alleviate my concerns.
I'm just very wary on voting for something that then creates other. So I'm not saying that I don't want to report, but then if it's in here that I have to, and I have a week where I don't, yes, Councillor Burgess.
I'd just like to say, it looks to me like, reading through this, that Councillor Canberra-Smith doesn't want to trust the General Manager. I feel that the General Manager reports to the Mayor. If the Mayor's happy with it, we're right back in November, we agreed to back the General Manager, no matter what. And you just looks like you're nitpicking and trying to find things to bring up against him all the time. That's the way I look at it, and I think it's probably time we should show him some support and don't vote for this amendment.
I would just seek some advice from... Okay, I've just got clarification. We're only receiving a noting, so it's not in the regulation that we have to. So it won't matter if we don't. So we can vote on the amended motion and see where that goes, because it won't have an effect either way on the reports. It's not like the other motion.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? Should these amendments be made in a closed council meeting for the closed General Manager's reports, if they're in regards to closed information? Or can it be made in open? Doesn't matter?
Through to you.
Through you, Mayor, appropriate in these circumstances that it's made in open. It discusses the reasons why it will be taken into closed, but it certainly should be in open.
Okay, so yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Sorry, through you, Mayor. Is there any reason why we can't just strike a happy medium? So, like, realistically, we could chase it around all day, couldn't we? Is there any reason why the General Manager applies himself to you for all these bits and pieces, and then we could ask you, you could just tell us. We could just have a really quick little calendar, you know, every month. We could just make it not heavy and dense, but obviously we can't keep control of everything and everybody because it's just not feasible. It just doesn't work. There's privacy issues. We've just bashed that around. I get where Jenny's coming from. And it's all about us, I think, heavily weighing on our shoulders, perhaps, that we need to be all over everything. But realistically, we can't be all over everything because it's impossible. But it would be good because we do miss out on snippets of information when you guys are doing things, and sometimes it's not quite specific enough for us to understand. Could we maybe just every couple of weeks get like a quick email, even if it was just like, you know, very primitive in a calendar with the date written, you know, did this, GM's on leave, blah, 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 just so that it probably eases Jenny's mind and it gives us a bit of direction as to what's going on, but without getting too specific about everything.
It is my role anyway to do that.
It is your role.
Yeah, and I do that when, yeah. Maybe I need to do that better.
No, I don't think you need to do it better. I just think you do give us information, but often it's just one email at a time. Perhaps a bullet point review, perhaps, of the last couple of weeks, or maybe once a month, because we're not quite sure. I mean, you're very busy, don't get me wrong. Everyone's very busy, but we're often not quite sure where everybody is and what they're doing, and then we get community asking us questions that we don't have answers to because we're not quite sure of what's going on, which is frustrating. But I realise that you're very busy, but just a really quick little memo with, you know, this week I've got blah, 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 or maybe what you've been doing or who you've been talking to, but not quite who you've been meeting with and what was discussed, because it is sensitive, you know, quite often, and Jason probably doesn't want to get sued. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I do that a lot, but yes, thank you, Councillor Gibson.
Can I propose a suggested amendment to the wording to have council request future reports include attendance of the General Manager as provided to the Mayor? So that's just very simple. Exit interviews at a higher level, and I would make them quarterly, because I don't think you want them monthly. You want the general overview, and if it's monthly, then you can see who the exit interview connects to. Whereas if it's quarterly, it's sort of just painting the picture. Something very simple, like further detail of the General Manager and Mayor activities. So there's been a general request for more information, and that the Mayor has regular discussions to keep councillors involved. And if you have it as regular rather than weekly, I think that's less. I think it's these discussions that's going to allow us to work much better as a team, because you can actually discuss things and, you know, stay in touch with everybody, which is what we want to do. So,
So, Councillor Campbell-Smith, are you happy with
Yes.
the yeah?
The revised wording, yeah.
did you catch it?
Could I
So-
suggest a couple of
Do you want me to?
Yep.
related wording changes?
Well, just hang on a moment, and we'll see if he reads it out. Have you got? Yep. So,
Council requests that in future reports the following be included: attendance of the General Manager as provided to the Mayor, exit interviews at a higher level, quarterly, further detail of General Manager and Mayor activities, just leave it up to them to put a bit more detail in, and that the Mayor has regular discussions to keep councillors informed.
yes, Councillor Jessup.
Can I suggest we change the exit to simply a summary of exit interviews for the quarter?
Yes.
Not down to Bob's, you know, individual
Summary.
stuff. Yeah.
Of general themes.
Can I ask a question? Are exit interviews already included in the quarterly HR review papers that go to the audit panel?
I think it's exactly the same as what we provide to council. And look, I take the feedback. We could potentially analyse a little bit more and share a little bit more. So we can have a look at what else we can provide. And again, I stress that the importance of it is that we get them. So we don't want to stop that. So that's largely where, once we cross that line, we've gone too far.
And I also believe that we can, you could ask some of the questions that you've got here back through the GMPRC on their quarterly formal.
Through you, Mayor, just to seek clarification, are you wishing to retain the last two lines, any of the above considered confidential or commercial in confidence, to be provided in the general reports for closed meeting?
Yes, please.
And you're happy with that, Councillor Campbell-Smith? All right, so then I will put the amendment to the motion.
You'll put the motion.
Yep, put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is Councillor Thorpe, Armstrong, Jessup, Burgess, Campbell-Smith, O'Neill, Gibson and Doyle. And the motion is carried. Yep. Is there any questions on the reports? Yes, Councillor.
I had a few small questions.
Yes.
I noticed that the comments have been turned off on the Facebook posts. I just wondered if that removed, I can understand not getting negative commentary, but does it remove a channel of feedback? That was one of my questions.
I'll go
Through to the director, yeah.
So we don't have the resources in house to manage monitoring all the comments that go under each of our posts. The problem with that is that we risk missing certain comments that we need to address while addressing others, and obviously there's a level of inconsistency that we can't have. So rather than having that, we are guiding people to use the HVC email where it will be properly logged and their comments or requests be properly considered through normal processes. Just to clarify, the turning off of comments is for those where the intent is to inform. So yeah, it's not for, there'll be some where they are switched on where it's necessary, but most of the time it'll be off.
Thank you. I also had a question about, oh yes, I was interested in the participants who took up the weekly food boxes, which sounds like a fantastic initiative. I wondered how successful that had been, and I believe there was 8 participants. I also wondered how they were identified and screened, but it seems like a really good thing for council to be doing.
Thank you. I'll pass that one through to the director.
Through you, Mayor, I can't provide any information on who they've been provided to. That is certainly confidential, but we've, I don't have the name of the agencies in front of me. We've been working with the agencies who have helped us identify those, and the feedback is that they've been very well received.
Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
I did ask that question actually, because I went to the very excellent long table meal at the Huonville Primary School, and I did chat to Heather from the Food Hub about that, and she said at least there was 2 particular agencies involved, and one of them was the THC, the Health Council, and they chose 4 families, and I completely forget who the other agency was.
Diabetes Tasmania, Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
I also had another question through to the director, through you, Mayor, around the roads, and this was a question back from residents. Why did the grading stop halfway along the Cygnet Coast Road? You just all right. You did outside my place, so I'm happy.
I'll pass that through to the director.
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Gibson, I don't think you want to suggest that we were grading outside your house in a public forum, because we certainly weren't. And I don't actually know what actual house number you are. So, look, we obviously, we don't grade entire roads. If there's sections of roads that if they're well compacted and don't need attention, we don't touch them. The decision was made to do some of the worst parts on Cygnet Coast Road, and we've then taken the grader down. It's heading south at the moment, where there's some more urgent attention has been programmed. When we then head back north, we'll come back through Cygnet Coast Road and do that top section. So, yeah, it's just a programming event. We will be back.
Okay. I guess I was under the understanding that when roads were going to be done, that was going to sort of do the whole road, but I understand what you're saying. The other end of the Cygnet Coast Road, unfortunately, is particularly bad.
Yeah, there's some, well, particularly bad. I don't know. I drive it regularly, but it's acceptable according to our standard at the moment, and we will come back to it. When I say we don't do the whole road, we inspect the entire road, and we make the decision on what maintenance is necessary to be done. That just means literally a grader blade might get lifted for a 100-metre section, because particularly coming into winter, the worst thing we can do if it's already well compacted and there's good shape on the road is to touch it. You leave it alone if it's compacted. So, but like I said, that's not the reason why we've moved on from Cygnet Coast Road. There's more to do, but it can wait while we do something more urgent, and we've got to come back north after we go south. So a couple of weeks we'll be back there.
I wondered whether we could have more detail on the discussion that was commenced with Sustainable Timber Tasmania on the back of Councillor Thorpe's motion.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mayor.
I can, we are requesting, we are, and I know that it will be also possibly in the waste area as well, to do with that dumping. So we are endeavouring to get that. As soon as I have some information, I'll be straight back to you to let you know when that is. I will, yep.
And I wondered, through you, Mayor, through to the General Manager, when the letter might be sent through to the Crown regarding the Huon River leases. I noticed that it was...
Okay, no problems. I'll pass through you to General Manager, through to the Director, if I may.
I can take that one through
Thank you.
Mayor, Councillor Gibson, it's on my desk to do. There's a extensive paper-based application process to do, which is sitting in a stack of other priorities that I've got, so it has not yet gone out the door. It's probably halfway done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back?
Well, the arts and culture minutes were part of those reports. So I was, as the arts and culture...
Yep, you'd like to speak to them?
I was just going to speak to them very
Yep.
briefly.
Yep.
There was a long discussion about working to create opportunities to remove the hurdles on running music events around the halls of the Huon and to activate those halls and get more things happening. And that was very interesting, and there's some action happening around that as well. And sort of accompanying that was talk about how to support volunteers because a lot of these sorts of events are very dependent on volunteer participation to make it happen. So somehow, some way of at least recompensing volunteers for out-of-pocket expenses was discussed. And there was talk about the paperwork and the deposits on some of the halls being prohibitive and trying to find a way around that. But that was, there was a whole discussion around that. And the couple of murals planned to go up in Huonville, and I don't know quite what's happened about the one at the is it John's supermarket, where we're having trouble getting access, but I think they're working on that. There was discussion about the creative grants being a little bit too small because they haven't sort of kept up with the cost of actually doing artwork, and discussion about whether they should be fewer, bigger grants to make them more attractive, because people aren't just not taking them up, which seems crazy. And there's where the group's going to work on a paper highlighting the socio-economic benefits of the creative sector in the Huon. And that was really the summation of that quarterly meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do we have any other? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I have two areas to discuss. I would also just draw attention to the Health and Wellbeing Committee reports. What surprised me was well, not surprised me, but impressed me, was the wide range of people who are on that committee and the different physical and mental health and resilience themes that were expressed. And I know a couple of councillors have some very keen sentiments about resilience, and we talked quite a bit about the climate change impact on mental health and the evidence that's coming out for that. And I'd certainly just make the invite to any councillors who have health and wellbeing issues that they want to raise. It's a very good place to have as a sounding board if you want to throw an issue open. I can't remember when the next meeting is, but it's on our meeting agenda. But if anybody wants to attend to throw around issues, I'm more than happy to facilitate their attendance at those meetings. So that's that bit. The other bit I would like to have a quick comment, I suppose, on the statutory planning work that was mentioned on whatever page it was of the report. I have attended a number of the LPS meetings, and I have a motion here which unfortunately I've been told I can't raise as an amendment, which was one of the things that I wanted to do, but I will table that motion, I think, for the next meeting.
Can you just explain why you couldn't do that?
I misheard, maybe is the best way of putting it, that I'd have an opportunity to raise it through the meeting as it was related to other matters on the agenda. But we've since been told by the legal governance side of the shop that it wouldn't allow enough time for officers to make comment, even though I think it's more of a restatement of our existing principles, which officers have actually told us about in, given us plenty of advice. My concern is I've been attending the LPS and others have reported to me. I don't think the process is honouring our principles. We have hired consultants who have openly said, I don't agree with the principles and I'll give my own advice. Now, while they can put a hat on that says, I'm just giving qualified technical advice, what concerns me is when that runs contrary to our principles and the officer basically says, I agree with what she's saying. It's giving the Planning Commission a very confused understanding of what this group, the Planning Authority, when we meet in that sense, has said.
Okay, that's fine. So what are you wanting to do?
Well, I'd like to move a motion, but
Yeah,
I've been
I know
told
you
I can't.
That's right.
So I think I'm wanting that the GM and the director probably notes this issue, and I've got another example where the environmental consultant.
Well, I don't know whether, do we need to do that, or can you just ask that they take on board your concerns? Because I think you've already made them quite aware. Yeah. Because it is, have you witnessed everything you're going to speak about?
I've received a transcript which I can get as a stat deck if you want it, but the other one is I have witnessed.
Yep, that's
I have
fine.
witnessed.
No, I'm just clarifying for people that are listening. Just hang on a moment.
Yeah.
Just to add through you, Mayor, it's also been brought up as a public question time question, which would be taken on notice as well.
Yeah.
So that was a question in.
Well, that's true, but I suppose I'm speaking now as a member of the Planning Authority, and I would hope that our officers will take that on board, because we agreed that the Planning Authority would not stand in the way of some of the representations, but what I am observing is we are, by our silence, allowing tacit intent that we are opposing some of the representations, and some of them are quite in line with our principles around continuing use. And the greatest problem I have is that at one level we're saying to developers, no, we're committed to a strategic process and we're not going to make that decision until we've gone through the process. yet I have consultants here who are saying, oh, well, the planning authority doesn't want any more rural rural living zoning. They're quite opposed to it. I've seen them say that, the planning authority doesn't agree with rural because the intensity of use is too great. None of those things have been agreed by us as a strategic land planning authority. And I just think I would encourage the directors to take that away and maybe have encourage our consultants to be aware that we are still in a planning process and that they shouldn't be making maybe as stronger statements which would imply the planning process has been completed.
Thank you very
That's
much.
about all I can say.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Thank you. Do we have any other? No? Councillor Gibson out of the room. Do I have seen he's seconded? Oh, here he is. Okay, that I'll put it forward then that all those in favour of that motion, please, of the reports, please raise your hand. We've done that. Okay, all right. So we go move on. Okay. 13. 12, councillor workshops. Do you want to speak to the workshops, General Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. So, had 3 workshops in this paper. First one was on the 27th of March, which was some site visits to various council assets and buildings in Cygnet. On the 29th of March, we had a facilitated workshop to discuss councillor priorities. And on the 19th of April, we discussed the draft budget. The Director of People and Corporate Services and Acting Manager Finance led a discussion regarding the draft budget for FY 23-24. This is an opportunity for councillors' input and the ability to discuss and ask questions as to its development and progress. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. 13, we had the questions taken on notice of Councillor Cameron Smith and, yeah.
Director of People and Corporate Services just wants to add that point.
Okay, all right. I believe the Director has, yep, okay. I'll hand it over to you then.
Thank you, Mayor. When I was reviewing the papers this afternoon for tonight's meeting, I noticed that we hadn't answered the final part of the question here, which is in relation to consultant Paul Hammond's review and where that was being funded from. So I apologise for that. So I just wanted to answer that tonight. So that review is being funded by a line item in the General Manager's budget, a line item called Strategic Initiatives. So I think that review sort of falls comfortably within that description. Once again, I apologise for not responding earlier.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, and then we have 13.2 questions without notice. Yes, Councillor Cameron Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Gibson's already asked my question about the STT meeting, but I also wanted to ask what progress has been made so far to provide an anonymous feedback option for staff, given that this could be as simple as having drop boxes in each building.
I'll pass that through to you, General Manager, or through to the Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Just due to other priorities, we haven't made any progress on that at the moment, but primarily sort of around the whole Blue Bus initiative. That took a lot of organising and a lot of human resource time. But now that that's sort of behind us, we'll turn our mind to this item and update you accordingly.
Thank you. Other questions without notice? Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, just following up on my previous comment, trying to get a process understanding. I did flick this to, I think, did I flick this question to you, Jason, about and I'll read it if I haven't. The Planning Authority spent considerable time reflecting on the LPS and 35F, and overall did walk back from some aspects of the document. The Planning Authority wrote a set of guiding principles that it included in the 35F report. From my observations, it's unclear to me that either of the Council's environmental or planning consultants are working within these principles. So the question really is, what effort has been made to ensure that the Council's contractors have been fully briefed on the Planning Authority's principles, and what guidance have they been given to provide their advice consistently with the Planning Authority's position? I don't know if I sent that to you or not, Jason, sorry.
I think I have here, General Manager, the answer to those two. Question 2. Yeah, question 2. You'd like me to read that out, would you?
I'd love the answer.
The consultants engaged by the Council are expected to provide their independent opinions based on their expertise and knowledge in their respective fields. The consultants are aware of the guiding principles set out by the Planning Authority in 35F document, which are ultimately expressed as the views of the Planning Authority through the project manager, Strategic Land Use, who is representing the Planning Authority at these hearings. Minute. It is noted that the ERA has also revisited the Section 35 report adopted by Council in January 2023, and some of their recommendations have changed during the hearings. It is also important to note that the final decisions are the Commission's decisions, and they will form their opinion after hearing from both the Planning Authority and the representors.
That clarifies where we sit on that.
Thank you. Did you have your mic on?
No. Thank you, Mayor, for your answer.
Thank you. Have any other questions? Yes, you can have a question without notice.
Oh, thank you. It's in relation to Mark's speech.
Yeah.
How exactly did these consultants get chosen to be representing us with the planning scheme?
Okay, thank you. Can I pass that through to the Director, please?
Through you, Mayor, I may need to go to the Acting Director Community, how they originally engaged. However, they were engaged for the purpose of preparing the Section 35F report. I can't tell you the circumstances in how they were engaged. They provided the professional opinion in the report that was adopted by Council subject to the principles, so that's why they're present at the hearings.
Would you like to speak to that, Acting Director?
Just to clarify that actually the appointment occurred just before I took over the role. So,
yeah.
But my understanding was we went through a procurement process and we sought, a planning consultant to assist us, and there was an assessment of the submissions, and that appointment was made. But yeah,
yep,
it's a standard process as per our procurement policy.
Yep, thank you. Okay, do I have any other questions without notice? No. 13.3, Councillors' notice of motions. We've dealt with them, I believe. Agenda item 15.014/23, addressing councillors' misconduct discussion paper. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Canberra-Smith, do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Canberra-Smith, do you wish to speak to this?
Only briefly, Mayor, just, I could read these documents to us out, the discussion papers, and provide some feedback to the Director, and I'm happy with that. submission that we support the government's suggestion that a board of inquiry can be established for the specific, can't sound words now.
Yeah.
The specific purposes of investigating individual councillors as opposed to having to investigate the whole council in particular. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have anyone that else would like to speak or anything to say on this one? Okay. If there's no one to speak for or against, I'll move the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Okay. Let me find my next one. Okay. Agenda item 15 point, am I right? Yep. Yeah. 15.015/23. Merit-based recruitment in councils, discussion paper. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Yes, councillor, I've forgotten your name already, Thorpe. And a seconder, councillor Gibson. Would you like to speak to the motion, councillor Thorpe? No? Was there any other discussion on this? No? All right. All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. 15, agenda item 15.01/23, lease of public land, 236 Mountain River Road, Mountain River. I refer councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Councillor O'Neill. A seconder? Councillor Armstrong. Do you wish to speak to this? No? Okay. Do I have any other comments on this one? Yes, Councillor Thorpe.
I just have a question. This community group have been leasing this land for a long period of time. Just point 28 that the lease not be over a period exceeding 5 years. Just wondering what the strategic meaning of 5 years is, and if a longer lease term would actually be, more useful.
Okay. Pass that through to the Director.
Through you, Mayor, the requirements for leasing of public land is that you can lease up to 5 years without going through public consultation. You can lease longer. There is an extensive consultation process associated with that, so we standardise in these circumstances to 5 years.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions on this one? Yes, Councillor Camber-Smith.
I did wonder if we could ask the lessee to make it a bit more public, that that's land that people can walk on, if that's appropriate. It does say there's dog walking, etc. I wasn't aware of that until I read this particular report. I don't know if that could be clarified.
Yeah, okay. Where would you like them to?
Well, it just says it's used for dog walking because it is public land.
Yes.
Maybe we could somehow with the lessee just put a note in the the Mountain River Community Forum or something that we've renewed the lease and don't forget you can you are allowed to walk through this area or something. I don't know.
Through to you, Director. Is that?
Through you, Mayor, the purpose of a lease is exclusive possession. So it is a matter for them as a club to allow that, the dog walking and those things to occur.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? No? You don't want to close, Dave? Okay. Well, all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 15.017/23, lease of public land, Yuan Valley PCYC, 72 Wilmont Road. I refer councillors to the recommendation of this report. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Armstrong, a seconder. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Armstrong, do you want to speak to this?
Not really, Mayor, but kind of. I know that they lease this bit of land, and I know that it's a really good asset to have in the community. How does this is where I get confused with things. Does this actually conflict? Because we have, like, we manage the pools, and then other sporting people lease property off us. Does this mean that we should be promoting them or helping them? Because they do need a bit of publicisation. What's that word I'm trying to say?
Publicity. You
Publicity.
Need someone, yeah.
Yes. So can we actually, like, help these sorts of organisations get going as a council by word of mouth, but then not cross lines with what we own as well? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? That didn't come out well. I'm a bit fatigued this evening.
That's okay. I know. I get what you're trying to come across.
That would be good.
It's up to the PCYC. It's their own building on our land. It's not like our other sporting things. So I did raise this question.
Because it is kind of weird that they have a sporting thing on our land and we've got sporting things on our land, but they manage themselves and then we manage ours. So is that not kind of a bit of a conflict across the board?
I might pass that through to the director and he can give me the answer.
He loves it, doesn't he?
Well, the lease one through to you. On Deb's question about we have our own sport centres on our land. This is our land and it's a PCYC. Do you want to help them more, or you're thinking that we don't help our own?
I'd like to help them more.
Right.
Because I know that they do need a bit more
Now that's a bit different
publicity.
then. Yeah.
But I'm not sure that we can because...
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
There
totally.
you go. We got to it in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that's a conversation that you can probably have with them.
Well, they've had it with me.
Oh.
And I'm not quite sure how to do that thing.
Okay. All right, we can go through to the director.
Probably could be dealt with outside of the lease process, but we as community wellbeing can engage with them to see how we can assist them. So maybe it's a offline, we can make introductions and then have those conversations.
I do have a meeting in June, which I'll be able to flick to you. That I haven't had yet, but I will forecast that I have a meeting in June.
And sorry, Mayor, that would be quite good because it is a bit strange because there is that expectation because it's on council land that we should be helping, but I know that we've got enough on our plate with our own assets as well. But it is a really good community building and it could be utilised.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any is there any other questions or statements? No? Do you have a closed, Councillor Armstrong? No? Okay. All right. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors and the motion is carried. Agenda item 15.018/23, lease of public land, 72 Wilmot Road. It's the Yulnville Men's Shed. I refer councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor, I had lots of hands up. I'll go Councillor Thorpe. A seconder, Councillor Burgess. Councillor Thorpe, do you wish to speak to the motion? You don't? Does anybody else have a question or a statement on this one? No? Okay. I'll go straight to, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all, councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 15.019/23, cash in lieu of car parking contribution policy relating to 14A Wilmot Road, Yornville for DA 267-2022. I refer the councillors to the recommendation.
Mayor, can I just make a comment? I'd like to declare a conflict of interest. I've just made an observation that as part of this policy, the applicant has used a business name that I have a financial interest in being eligible for the reduction on the community benefits component of the policy.
Okay.
So I'd just like to declare that
So we
conflict of
can
interest.
note that and you can fill out the form and leave the room. Is that correct? Yep. All right. Fill your form out when you're outside. Yep. Okay. Do I have a councillor to move a motion, please? Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Gibson. Councillor Campbell-Smith, would you like to speak to this motion? Recommendation?
I'm fully supportive of the motion. It appears that what they're offering is a very good community benefit. It's an extra sort of mobile catering business that can go around to various events. I can't imagine that it's going to add a lot of parking issues to Huonville. But I also had a question, if I may. I mean, does this flat charge that we generally charge, cash in lieu of parking, is it a flat rate? Regardless of what size of operation it is, does it only go? Is it only against retail businesses? You know, I'm just slightly puzzled about how it applies normally under normal circumstances.
Okay. I'll pass through to the appropriate director.
Through you, Mayor, I might respond on this one. I don't have the copy of the policy in front of me.
Yeah.
It certainly applies for street parking, so it doesn't apply for rural areas. So if you're having a business operation activity which is in a local business zone, commercial zone, those sorts of village zones, those sorts of zones where the car parking requirements are triggered under the scheme, then that's where the rate applies, and it's a flat rate per car parking space.
Yep.
Per car parking space. Okay.
Yeah. In the attachments, you'll find it. Yeah. 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 Okay. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
Just a question regarding that flat rate. Is that still a realistic cost of replacement of creating a car park? Because I guess that's going into our funds so that we can build car parks. And I just know how much building costs have gone up. Do we keep pace, I guess, is my question.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I will pass that through you, GM, to the appropriate director.
Through you, Mayor, I can field that one. I don't actually know, so I'll take some of it on notice and come back to you because it's a great question. I'm unaware of when that was last reviewed to establish that costing. It certainly hasn't been done in the time frame that I've been here. Certainly costs have increased in even that period. So it's worth establishing what the basis of it has been. Did you want to add something? Yep.
Are you happy for that one to be taken? Yeah. Thank you. Lovely. All right. Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Mayor, through you, two sort of related questions. I'm just wondering what the zoning of the land is. It looks like it's a right of way, so I'm a bit confused about that. But given that it's a mobile food van and as such it would move and it's not a permanent placement there. Does the car parking policy trigger if it's a temporary? Because I'm assuming if somebody parks their food van in town somewhere, we don't suddenly race up to them and ask for a $5,000 contribution. So is there something that makes this more eligible for that fee, I suppose, is my question. Thank you.
Okay. Can I pass that through to the relevant director?
Through you, Mayor, the zone is local business. The mobile food van required a development application because it's predominantly going to be trading from that location. So that's what then triggers the parking requirement.
Okay, do we have any other questions or no? Do we need to, no, we don't need to close then if we don't need to have a closing statement if there's no further discussion, so I'll put that in forward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's Councillor Armstrong, Burgess, Camber-Smith, Jessup, that's all councillors, and yeah, you didn't have your hand up to start with. Okay, agenda item 16.006/23, financial report. I refer the councillors to the recommendation. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson and Councillor Armstrong, a seconder. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, briefly.
Yeah.
It's once again a nicely put together report. It's nice to see that we're clawing our way away from the $3 million deficit, especially taking into account the unfavourable variations. So that's good. I guess for the benefit of people watching, I was wondering if the relative director could just describe what the additional contractor expenses for finance and planning of $50,000 and $60,000 respectively relate to.
Thank you. Through you, General Manager, to the Director, if I may.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. In relation to finance, it's the cost of temporary staff over and above the costs that we would have experienced through having permanent staff. So that's the additional cost there. Those temporary staff have come through Hayes recruitment. And in relation to planning, it's contract staff to remedy the fact that we're short of planning staff. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any other? Yes.
One other question.
Yes, go for it.
Right.
Yep.
So just to clarify, so with that, the flood relief, we've spent all the money and we're waiting, but have got nothing back in, and I guess what percentage of that do we expect to recover?
I will pass back through. And I think that Lockie might have, Director might have gave that answer before.
Yeah, Mr. Krantz might be better
Yeah.
off to answer this one because I'm not fully across that detail.
Yeah.
Sure. I haven't actually had a recent update from our finance manager on where it's up to, which leads me to expect it's still where it's at, which is with the Auditor General, going through the relevant process. We expect to get all of it back because we followed all the relevant criteria, substantiated what we had spent that money on. So it's just literally the machinations that need to happen to sign that off.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Campbell-Smith.
Thank you. I just had a couple of queries, if I may, about, it says here, downward revision of waste cartage costs of 144k due to reduction in expected recycling volumes. I just wondered why there's been a reduction in recycling volumes. You'd sort of rather expect that to be showing an upward trend. And secondly, I note that we've spent 57% of our capital works programme. Are we still on track to complete, given that we're maybe 3/4 of the way through the year?
Okay. Thank you. I will pass that through, General Manager, to the Director, if I may.
Yep, so the waste question first. Waste volumes overall have actually trended down this year. Recycling has fallen in line with general waste. Not entirely sure why. There is some evidence that we've got reductions in particularly building waste, commercial waste, that kind of stuff. Bit of a slowdown in that area perhaps, and that has been a huge contributor in recent years. But yeah, just volumes generally are down. But there's also the actual contributing to the cartage component is some processing changes that we've made. Better compaction and changes in the types of bins we're using have meant that for the same volumes that are actually leaving the valley, we're carting them more efficiently.
Sure.
So a lot of the savings been realised through there. We're looking at efficiency opportunities in that space all the time. Transport is our killer down here. So that's largely the piece that's driving that. With regards to the capital works program, yes, we are on track. There's obviously there's a significant amount of work happening right now. We're still in the construction period where things catch up on that in percentage terms, and then there is a invoicing lag behind physical works completion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Jessup.
Thank you, Mitch. Just going back to our $360,000 flood payment, that I'm assuming that is actually currently sitting in the deficit and we haven't realised any future payback from that. So that's a first assumption I'd just like to check. The second assumption is we're probably not going to get it by the end of this financial year, would be my guess. And if we don't, are we going to bring it to account somehow? Because effectively that's a substantial decrease in our deficit if we've got that, and it shows that we have actually worked to come back from that deficit. So
Okay, thank you. If I can pass through to the appropriate Director, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We're able to sort of remove certain transactions from... Green light's on. So we're able to remove certain transactions from our overall result to come back to our underlying. One of those things that we can remove is costs such as this, and equally when we receive the recovery, that income will be removed. So to answer your question, no, it's not in our underlying result at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor, I can come back to you. Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Oh, hello again, Mayor. With this, the Jobs Hub, I asked this question before. Do we have an update on when we might be seeing some movement around this Jobs Hub that's been talked about for a very long time, this $199,000 that I think I asked you this question before, didn't I? Is that happening soon or not at all? It's a question I've had a bit, and it has been a while since it was announced, but we still haven't really seen any action on the front.
Our presence now, so we have on the ground and actually getting some movement. We've had some brand development, and I have a message to start following in a social context, LinkedIn. So they're starting to get some profile there. There's a website presence, no office presence, but that was talked about in the last board meeting I attended as to what might be the approach going forward, given there isn't a necessary requirement to have an office presence as much as a meeting place for people that we're going to be working with. But yeah, the plans are certainly starting to hatch in a sense. We've recently had a draft report just regarding the labour position and I can't remember the actual name, it's just got a blank, but the consultant work that KPMG are doing on updating the Kinmore and Gilbert Valley position there. So we are slowly getting through that information in order to start to get some traction. But yeah, look, like every organisation start up, there's a lot of hard yards to get things moving. So, but yeah, I think the presence is there now, in summary, and when we do get some information around that, that KPMG report, we'll be able to share some more. But I did talk to the board in a sense of trying to get some information coming back through the channels to share and be able to update, and that's why I think the socials are going to be good, just to start getting those messages out.
Because it is a little bit shady, and I think there's a misconception too that council are probably more involved than they actually are in this, because we effectively will be managing it as opposed to the other like agencies down the road that are not managed by council. So I think it would be good to finally get that moving along so people can see how it's actually going to be implemented and work. So that's good. Thank you.
And I did have a question from a resident, and I did guide that resident to the page where they can receive the information on the person that was employed.
Good.
As the community person. So I have answered that one to them. So, excellent. Yeah. Okay. Do I have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Burgess.
Just a query, Mayor. I'm looking at the capital works in progress, and I can see there's budget allocations for 22, 23, and then we've got a column with transfers, and I don't really quite understand what that column's about. I see positive and negative figures in that, and it looks like money moves from one job to another. Is that what happens there?
Okay, I can pass that through to the General Manager to go to the... Yeah?
Okay, I'm not on the page you're on, Andrew. You're able to just give me a reference there, and then...
Year-to-date capital works in progress 22-23 on the top page. There's figures in there. An example would be reseal preparation as required, budgeted 294,000, not started. There's 179 budgeted, 500,000, and there's a negative figure of 385. Page 6.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's just the complete column of transfers. Don't really understand what that's about.
Through you, Mayor, I can assist with that one. So that transfers column, as the name suggests, is just transfers between various items. So there are occasions when some jobs come in under budget, so we might transfer the remaining budget allocations to other areas. And there's also in this program, the Capital Works program, a number of what we call sort of global allocations. So that reseal preparation one that you've highlighted is an example of that. So that'll be broken down into a number of individual jobs when those jobs occur. And so when they occur, the relevant amount will be taken out of that global allocation and given a specific job number. And so that there are a few like that within the program. That column always nets to zero.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any others? Councillor Gibson, do you want to? Okay, all right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried. Agenda item 16.007/23, status report, outstanding rate status. I refer the councillors to the recommendation that the report be received and noted. Do I have a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Gibson and seconded Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to this?
Not really. It seems like it's comparable to previous years or slightly less, so
Yep.
it sounds like it's well in hand.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions or statements on this one? No? You don't need to close then? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors. The motion is carried. Okay, I'd like to thank the gallery today for attending, and those watching at home. The next meeting of the ordinary meeting of council is Thursday the 15th of December. Oh, when is it? Sorry, that's wrong, my wrong. Is Wednesday the... What? Yep. Is Wednesday the 24th of May 2023 at 6 p.m. So as we are going into close now, we are still recording. We must, yes? Okay. I move the motion to go into close. Everyone please raise your hand. I'll move it. Yes, Councillor Jessup, and seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's all councillors, and the motion is carried.